Project 10, Part 2. Beyond Project 11, the remaining projects rely pretty heavily on the files we are generating here. This project is how to create a true color in Photoshop. For this one, begin with the Photoshop color wheel that you just recently completed in Part 1. The first part of these instructions show you how I got what is the unmerged or unrefined 24-step color wheel. There's a file that I will give you at the conclusion of this presentation. It will be used for the true color portion and both of the grayscale conversions. They are what you will be using to create Project 13. Each of you will be assigned a color to refine as a color to grayscale conversion and later as a hue chroma triangle. But for now, I want you to start off with the divided color wheel and shut off everything except the borders and the dividing line layer and the color wheel and merge them down into one layer. With the color wheel on and the color wheel layer on, note that the lines do a pretty good job of dividing the colors up, but what really isn't still necessary is the defining of the colors into 24 definitive steps. First, you will note here that I have made an additional copy of both the color wheel layer and the template layer, the border or the division lines. I usually name them original color wheel and original template, and then I shut them off. That way they're safe. You may even want to take the added precaution of locking them so that you don't accidentally do anything to them. That way you can always back up if you make a mistake. Remember, in any form of digital media, redundancy is a good thing. Now with the template layer on and the color wheel copy layers on, merge them down into one layer. Going forward, watch the foreground color swatch in the lower end of the tool palette at the left. Your layers palette should now look like mine with your original shut off and safely tucked away. I noticed here in this tutorial write-up that mine aren't locked. Shame on me. Now let me give you a brief demonstration of what you are going to be doing next in order to convert the transitional color wheel into a converted or refined color wheel of 24 distinct colors. Note that I have selected one wedge and it is highlighted here with marching ants. I used my magic wand tool to select the entire wedge area. It's easy after I have merged the layers and the black frame is darker than any of the colors in the wedge itself. If you'll notice in the enlarged inset of the color wheel here at the left, using my color picker, the eyedropper tool on your tool palette, select a sample of the color in the wedged area. In this particular case, I want to ensure that the color I create is not at all like the color to the immediate right, which is kind of a red-orange. I have selected my color from the extreme left side of the sample area near the template line. This takes some experimentation. Some colors work better if you take the sampling from the right side of the wedge, others from the left. The key is to make the color wedges all distinctly different. With the sample area still selected, I color in the entire wedge with that color. Note that the foreground color has changed in the lower end of the tool palette to the left. I can now either use my paintbrush tool to color the entire wedge area or the paint bucket tool. This wedge in the color wheel is isolated from the others because of the marching ants, isolating it from everything else. This wedge is now all one color and will have a distinct RGB designation for it rather than the many designations that the gradient color state has. This is what I want you to do to all 24 wedges. To continue, here is what the color wheel will look like when completed. This is a 24-step color wheel with 24 individual colors derived from the original Photoshop color wheel. Each of these wedges is a solid color. This is what it looked like before I blended the wedges. And this is what it looks like now. Note that I have assigned them numbers. This is what each of you will be doing to your 24-step color wheel and is the first part of this assignment. When you turn in your file on Canvas, be sure that it is labeled Project 10.1 24-step color wheel. So this is part 1 of Project 10. For part 2, I'm going to show you this demonstration. Then you will all be assigned a color, and I expect that you will do the same with them. At this point, we will begin using this master file. It is the hue to grayscale file. Note that it has two layers, a frame layer and a white background layer. I've also created a third layer, and using my text tool, I've designated that it is color number 24. If you remember, at the end of the color wheel process, I had numbered all of the colors on the color wheel. I'm going to be using color number 24 for this demo. That is the one near the top at the near 12 o'clock position. So using my color picker, I will sample that color. Given that I redid all of the colors as solid color wedges, this makes the task much easier. Notice that the foreground color swatch at the bottom of the tool palette has changed to that color. If I were to double click on that swatch, the color picker editor window will open, and I will see the color is composed of red 255, green 7, and blue 0. I will add that information here in a moment. I've created a new layer in between the frame and the white background layer, and using my paint bucket or the paintbrush tool, I've dropped that color into the layer between the frame and the white background. Now getting back to the color, using my type tool, I've added a layer that shows that my sample now reads color number 24, red 255, green 7, and blue 0. Remember our discussion on the WebSave color presentation? These colors should now make some sense. So using my type tool, I add another layer and will complete the file by putting my name below in the lower left-hand corner. Now we're going to create a gray value equivalent of this color so that I can do a gradient scale of this color in Project 11. To obtain my grayscale information, I will use my rectangular marquee tool, and making sure that I'm on the color layer, I will drag it around the right half of the document and do a Command C. This copies the color without removing it. I will open a new document and do a Command V. This pastes the information that I took from the master file. Your color will be different, but your new file should look like this. Next, I want you to go to Image, Mode, Grayscale. Sorry for the partial chopped off image here. What I'm doing is converting the color into a value of pure gray. I do not want any cross-contamination from other colors, only pure gray, and this is the best way to do it. Your screen prompts will ask you to flatten the file. This simply means flattening the color into the locked background layer, and of course I do. And next, I will discard all of the color information. And the resultant file looks like this. This is the gray that my color 24 would be the equivalent of on a grayscale, and I will need to know this for the next part of this process, which is the color to grayscale portion of this in Project 11. Now I'm going to copy this gray color, so I'll do a Command A, Command C for select all and copy. And returning to the hue to grayscale file, paste it into the spot where I selected the color from moments ago. I now have both the color on the left-hand side and its equivalent gray on the right-hand side. And now I can see that the RGB equivalent of red number 24 is gray RGB 130, or red 130, green 130, blue 130. At this point, each of you will be assigned a color and this master hue to gray file. This is the information that I will give you to complete the final part of this project, and is the file that we will pick up for the pure color to gray gradient conversion scale in Photoshop in project number 11.